A new Free Press article further illustrates the rift that formed between Steve Yzerman and Chris Ilitch. Did that rift cause hesitation that cost them Steven Stamkos?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. And Friday afternoon, Scotty, Carlos Monarrez of the Detroit Free Press published a new article where he was pretty critical of the idea of Jeff Greenberg being a potential candidate for the next general manager of the Detroit Red Wings. And we're not going to relitigate that conversation because we had our own conversation about that last week. But in that article, there was a couple of interesting tidbits about the relationship between Chris Ilitch and Steve Yzerman provided to Carlos by, as he put, an anonymous source, obviously wanting to protect their own job. Makes sense. And we're going to talk about some of those quotes as well as whether or not it cost them, that hesitation that formed, cost them a player of Steven Stamkos' caliber as well as Anthony Mantha, before continuing our player previews of JT Compher and Michael Brandsegg-Nygard. No mailbag this Monday. Keep those questions coming at loredwings@gmail.com for your questions, and we'll try to get them answered every Monday when we can. Before we get to any of that, got to let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Join all the action at FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a home run this MLB season. All right, Scotty, let's dive right into it. I kind of set the table there already regarding the article from Carlos Monarrez. The things in that article that I found interesting and new just kind of helped further paint the picture as to the rift that had formed between Steve Yzerman and Chris Ilitch and why that rift had formed. And one of the things that he put, and I sort of paraphrasing this as I wrote it down on my notepad here, but he says that an anonymous source said that Yzerman is still trying to figure out how to use and explain analytics, and that Yzerman struggled to explain things analytically to Chris Ilitch rather than in hockey terms, because Chris Ilitch can understand things from an analytical point of view. And and then further on from there, that Chris Ilitch's hesitation led to missing out on players like Stamkos in the 2024 offseason, and then Mantha this last offseason. So I want to get your opinion here, Scotty, because there's a lot of, I feel, leaps in logic that can be made trying to connect those two dots, the relationship between analytically based and hockey terms versus then into not getting those two players. How do you feel that gap played a part in the, what's the word I'm looking for? Inevitable, that's the word, departure of Steve Yzerman?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it played a role. I think this is such a fascinating kind of, I don't even know if it's a peek behind the curtain. It's more of like putting your ear up against a curtain and trying to like infer what is happening from our perspective. Obviously, the beat writers have their sources that are actual. We don't. So this is all just kind of not assuming, but like trying to piece things together on our part. I think it certainly played a role based on that. I also think that Ilitch probably would not have cared as much about understanding, like signing a certain player or bringing someone in or the value of a player if the team was good. Like I feel like that is still winning solves all is such a cliche thing, but like I still feel like that's how I feel about this situation too. Like if the Wings were really good, I'm sure he would have been like, okay, like the hockey people clearly know what they're doing. I'm going to take a little bit of a back seat and not be so like hands-on and like demand, explanations for the players that they're trying to spend my money on, whatever. Whereas in this case, it just feels like Yzerman was trying to say, hey, we should sign player X, player Y, player Z. And Ilitch was like, well, we suck, and I'm trying to figure out if bringing in player X, Y, or Z would actually be beneficial. Like, I feel like the disconnect still kind of revolves around the success of the team more than anything else, I feel.
Yeah, I really do agree with you on that one. I think that the fact that if you're going to be a hands-off owner, right, then be hands-off. Don't worry about the players are trying to sign. Well, that only works, as you put it, if the team is playing well. And going into the 2024 offseason, we just witnessed this historic collapse of the team into March, and then they missed the playoffs on a tiebreaker. So it makes sense that if there was a distrust or a doubt, maybe more of a doubt, forming in Chris Ilitch's head, that he would start to question the signings that Steve Yzerman wants to do. Now, I don't think Chris Ilitch, unless he's doing his own independent research, would know that Steven Stamkos was having a down year going into that offseason, because why would you hesitate to sign a future Hall of Famer in Steven Stamkos? Like Anthony Mantha, whatever, especially because that was this offseason. Dylan Larkin wanted out. I don't care whether or not we got Anthony Mantha to begin with, because the team's going to be bad. But 2 offseasons ago, signing Steven Stamkos, even a Steven Stamkos that at that point looked like he was declining, would have been an offensive punch this team
for sure
needs, right? Like at that time we've talked about it at length that offseason. He was going to be a power play specialist, much like Patrick Kane was. And he was going to score a lot of goals. Now that year, after he signed his contract with Nashville, he had a down season. But this last year, he had a great bounce back season. He scored 42 goals. 42 goals, and 18 of those came at 5-on-5. So it's not even as if he wasn't scoring goals at 5-on-5. He had 33 points of his 67, 68 at 5-on-5 as well. His deployment was 50-50 offensive zone, defensive zone, and he was getting tough quality of competition because he was playing in a top 6 role. So yeah, Steven Stamkos, his first season in Nashville, away from Nikita Kucherov, it was a little bit hard for him. But then he bounced back fabulously this last year. And like, if he would have been on the Detroit Red Wings, if Chris Ilitch hadn't have hesitated, as Carlos Monarrez indicates that he did, he would have been a good top 6. He would have been the top left wing immediately. They would have had Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, and Steven Stamkos on a line.
Right.
Like, that hesitation annoys me a lot. But at the same time, that hesitation probably doesn't exist if the team had taken better strides in the right direction, and if Steve Yzerman could do a better job of selling Chris Ilitch. Like, that's the thing to me. Like, I feel like both parties here have fault in this, right? I don't know if I'm doing a good job of illustrating my point, but I feel as if Chris Ilitch is an analytically based guy, right? Why did you hire a guy that is an old school hockey guy in Steve Yzerman in the first place then?
Yeah, which is fair. I think perhaps we are taking this like too literal as like the entire Yzerman tenure. This is still a GM that got the money to sign Ben Sherratt and extend Ben Sherratt, who is one of the least analytically pleasing players in the entire NHL. And yet they have given him 2 contracts, while obviously Ilitch being the owner throughout all of it. So like, I reiterate the point. It's like, I think this is far more to do with like, hey, why is this not working? Why is the team like continuing to not make the postseason with the guys that you signed? Explain to me why these guys you want to sign this year are going to be any different, and he is unable to do so because of then a lack of analytics. I go back to, if the team was good, this isn't a story. And I truly, I know it's like weird to pick on one player, but I truly think Ben Sherratt is like the shining example of my point.
No, and that's a really, really good point, because it's true. And I do think that there is credence to the criticisms for Steve Yzerman. Like, he struggled to adapt to the analytics era.
For sure.
And that did probably cost the team some, right? Not that you have to be fully on board analytically speaking, right? Like, that doesn't have to be the ethos of your team's build. But in a league now where this is the way the league is going, it needs to be integrated into the team's structure a little bit more seriously.
For
and
sure.
The teams that do are the teams that are succeeding a little bit more right now. So Steve Yzerman's inability to adjust and learn, and we talked about it. He was a GM who is GMing a style that was relevant 10 years ago and a cap structure that was relevant 10 years ago. And that was part of the problem. And then Chris Ilitch was part of the problem because he hesitated in signing a future Hall of Famer in Steven Stamkos. Like, why? How do you hesitate to do that, even if he's coming off a down year? And then that brings me to this final point, which is it the money, right? Like, that's the one thing that people keep bringing up is like Chris Ilitch hesitated to sign Mantha and Stamkos because he didn't want to dedicate the money it would take, an $8 million contract for Steven Stamkos. And I can't wrap my head around that idea as being the reason, because this is a salary cap sport on a team in which has been to the salary cap just 2 years ago. Going into that offseason where Stamkos was a free agent, the Red Wings were against the salary cap. And so I can't wrap my head around an unwillingness to spend, period, being the reason, especially when this owner also owns another team has a salary that is twice as much as the Red Wings currently. Like, for me, it's an unwillingness to spend unless convinced. Like, that added little anecdote has to be part of it, which is a problem because, like, why do I have to convince you to sign a future Hall of Famer? I mean, again, I'm talking in circles, but it's just mind-numbing the disconnect that formed between the two. It's frustrating, but I guess they're heading in the right direction if they want analytics now.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess I think again, it's also interesting because this is like the salary cap is raising. And so there is maybe a little bit of like justified concern in my head about like, well, the salary cap goes up and now you don't want to spend, like, the salary cap's gone up a ton just in the last 2 years. And so I think there is, but again, like, to your point, he owns another team that spends twice as much. So unless he's just prioritizing one over the other, then that's really stupid. And that feels weird. I don't know. I think the whole thing is very odd. And I go back to my original point 10 minutes ago, which was just like, if the team was good, none of this is a story at all.
Yeah. If the team was good, none of it's a story at all. Yzerman couldn't figure out analytics, a language that Chris Ilitch wanted to be spoken to in. And because Steve Yzerman couldn't explain things in a way that Chris Ilitch wanted, he hesitated, and that cost him Steven Stamkos. Not the end of the world either way, but it does help illustrate why there was a disconnect that helped lead to this inevitable ending. Scotty, let's head to a break. When we return, we'll pick up the player preview, so stay tuned to segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with Daily Dingers. It's easy to play. You make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in this game. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep. Now you get the chance to make your prediction before first pitch. So, are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. One thing, too, that was in that article, I know we said we're going to move on, but I wanted to touch on this, is that Carlos, in his article, also wrote that his anonymous source alluded to the idea that the front office is chaotic right now because LCA is basically being run by baseball-minded people, which is a very, right now with how the Tigers are, analytically based. And I wonder if, and this is my speculation based on that quote, I wonder if the want to be more analytically based is because of the Tigers and the success that they've seen in a game, in a sport like hockey, that it's still itself trying to figure out the analytics. It's come a long way, but it's nowhere near baseball level. And I don't think it ever will be because there's a lot more variables in hockey, I feel, than in baseball where you can control a lot more.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the evolution of the sport, I mean, there will always be new numbers and new attempts at trying to get a competitive edge. I mean, I think the front office is probably in chaos right now because no one's manning the ship more than anything else. Like I would be shocked if the team that hasn't had a GM for like 2 almost 3 weeks now wasn't in complete chaos, regardless of who was like calling the shots. So I mean that's it's a good, like I said, I mean it's good for context to know kind of like who's helping aid them in this situation. But like I again, they literally don't have a GM. I think every team is kind of in chaos when you don't have a GM.
I guess all we can hope for right now is that they hire somebody who can speak the same language as Chris Ilitch and that is also good at being a hockey GM. You're gonna have to find
yeah. I mean, you would imagine Ilitch is not going to hire someone who doesn't speak the same language as him at this point. So.
I mean, you hired Steve Yzerman and they didn't speak the same language, but that was more reputation, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You're hiring Steve Yzerman, who's coming from Tampa and is a franchise legend.
Right.
All right, Scotty, JT Compher had another down year with the Detroit Red Wings. After his first season with Detroit, man, he put up 48 points, which was the second highest point total in his career, coming off a career high the year prior with the Colorado Avalanche. And in the last 2 years, 32 points, 28 points, just 11 goals and 17 assists in 82 games played. His production has declined. His role has begun to decline. He has bounced around between center and wing. And I struggle, honestly, just to think of when it comes to previewing this player. I think it's mostly what is his role going forward. That's what I struggle with.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with what the roster looks like after Larkin is traded. And I know that that's like a cop-out we keep saying about just everything, but it's hard. Like everything is contingent on that, everything. And so it's I don't know. I mean, I think there's something to be said, certainly for, if you want to get the best, most productive, maybe I should say, version of JT Compher on the ice every given night, then you probably put him at the bottom six wing role. But like, if they go into the season with no centers, then like, guess what? He's going to have to play center. And to be quite frank, I mean, he might even have to be like 2 or 3C, depending on, again, how the rest of it shakes out and how they feel about Marco Kasper going into the year. So there is a massive disconnect between what role do you give Compher to get the most bang for your buck and what role is he going to have out of necessity. There's a mass, similar to Andrew Cobb, there's a massive discrepancy between those two things.
Yeah, for me, it's less so because I just, in my brain, I just assume Larkin's gone. Like there's, even though there's a very real possibility.
He is gone. Yeah. I just meant like if the return is like, oh, we got a center back.
Or yeah. I understand what you're saying now. For me, it's less about the Larkin situation and more about Danielson. And that's what I'm like. Danielson is an NHL ready hockey player and he's a center and a right shot center. All things that JT Compher is. I mean, right now, JT Compher is probably a 3C, but if Nate Danielson makes the team, I'm not stuffing Nate Danielson on the fourth line. Like either Nate Danielson is going to be playing wing in a top 9 role, or I want to get him reps at center because that's the long-term hope for him, especially as a right shot, which has a little bit more value. Well, then where's JT Compher slide in? And it's like JT Compher would be pretty good fourth line center, I would think. Limited minutes. He's not like just the fact of the matter is he is not very effective right now. Or wasn't very effective last year. He wasn't very physical. He didn't produce a lot of offense. Copy and paste that conversation with Appleton and Rasmussen.
Sure.
And which is why we put those three in the same category. We talked about offloading contracts and players who maybe were just jerseys, so to speak. And JT Compher is in that group. So, I mean, I think in my ideal world, Nate Danielson comes into training camp and proves himself NHL ready and center ready, becomes your 3C, assuming that Kasper and Cop are your 1 and 2C, and that bumps Compher to the 4C, and you finally have like you have a decent fourth line that you can put out there for 10 minutes a night. other than that, like, I mean, he's not great in the face-off circle either. It's not like he has a high face-off percentage. Not that Nate Danielson did either in his stint, but
he led the league in cardio last year.
Right. Like, I think that JT Compher's best use for this team is a bottom 6 role, preferably for me on wing, because Nate Danielson has stepped in as a center or as the 4th line center. So, like, I don't know. My player preview is probably, hopefully, if you can get 28 points out of JT Compher in a 3rd or 4th line role, then sure, whatever. That's good enough. Because I don't expect, my bar has lowered to a point where I don't expect him to be the 48-point center we had him as in his first year here. So my player preview is lowering the bar, which is upsetting because you're paying him $5.1 million, but hey, the salary cap's going up.
Agreed.
All right, Scotty, let's head to a break. When we return, we'll talk about Michael Brandsegg-Nygard. Stay tuned to segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. All right, Scotty. Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, just 1 assist in those 14 games, but he lit it up with the Grand Rapids Griffins, 44 points in 60 games played. What are we expecting from the former first-round pick this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is. We love MBN here, and like, this is a guy that we are very high on and think that long term can be a part of the solution to this team going forward, et cetera, et cetera. It's really just a matter of, is this year like the year that he maybe takes his first like leap at the NHL level? I think for me, I am so confident that this team is going to be bad that I think it is in the Wings' best interest to develop their young talent. And to me, he is clearly too good for Grand Rapids and like has proven that he does not need to play a full season there anymore. Now, if you, I don't know, like if he comes into camp and you're like, he could spend a few weeks down there, whatever, then like fine. But I think ultimately this is a guy that I want to see getting legitimate NHL minutes so that he can develop and take those steps forward this upcoming year, because the tools that he has are very, very NHL ready and plus tools. It's just a matter of putting them all together in an NHL hockey game every night. And I think that is the point where he's at in development, and why, kind of regardless of what your opinion is of his talent level or production level today, I kind of just want to see him in the NHL all year, just because what else is the point of being bad if not to develop your young players?
Yeah, I think it was Max Boltman who said or wrote earlier in the offseason that Michael Brandsegg-Nygard can come in and play a bottom 6 role immediately. Like, he is NHL physically, he's NHL ready, but it comes down to what you want from him. If you want him to develop more as a goal scorer, then he may need more time at the Grand Rapids level. But at minimum, like, he's NHL ready as it is. It's just what you want out of him this season. And I align with you, Scotty, where this team's going to be bad anyways. So why not let the young kids eat, see what they can do at the NHL level? And he's going to have an entire offseason to get, put it together, so to speak. We've seen a lot of times where players go into one offseason as one player and they come out looking like a completely different guy. Like, you talk about the offseason where Lucas Raymond put on 8 pounds, right? And then he went on and had like an 80-point season. So it mattered. It does matter in the end. Like, players' off seasons and how they treat it can make a difference. So there is definitely, we think we know what Michael Brandsegg-Nygard's ceiling can be. It's just, can he achieve it? And I'm hoping to see that he has more than 1 point on the NHL level this year. Because even last year when we were watching him, we saw what we thought we knew, which was, this is a player who's going to try very hard. He's going to give it his all in the corners, and he's got a powerful shot. But the problem was, the pace wasn't there. He wasn't NHL pace yet. He wasn't thinking the game fast enough. And if he can improve upon that enough this offseason, then he can be an effectual member of the middle six, maybe top six, right?
Sure.
Like there's going to be questions of who's going to be playing on that the fourth wing role in the top six. And Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, with his pedigree, his draft pedigree, and his raw talent, could be a candidate for that, right? Like if Emmett Finney can play top line left wing as a seventh round draft pick 2 years after his draft, Michael Brandsegg-Nygard can definitely be that guy too. So I think that when it comes to previewing MBN, there is a lot of what he can be because we don't know a lot of what he will be yet. And I think he can be a top six winger, top six power forward scoring winger, kind of filling in that Anthony Mantha role that the Red Wings were going to sign Mantha to be before that deal fell through. You just need him to take a step forward. And I think that's really the bar for MBN, is just show us a step forward. I'm not asking MBN to come in next year and score 20 goals and have 20 assists for 40 points at the NHL level.
For sure.
But I'm asking him to show us more of what we think he has and be, an effective NHL player.
Agreed. I think this preseason and camp, he's one of the names that I think are going to have people are going to be the most interested in, right? Like obviously Danielson and obviously Casper and like those guys. But I think MBN is maybe there's like the biggest difference between like potential role. Like he could literally walk out of camp as like a top line wing. He could also walk out of camp in the AHL. Like it's just, there's a lot of variance in what he could be on opening night for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's interesting is I'm looking at his data right now, and 14 games played is obviously a small sample size, and he kind of played everywhere in the lineup in those 14 games, but his expected goal share was 57%, which is really good. His actual goal share was 22%. 22% when he was with the Red Wings this year. Like, that's a stark difference. It's just one of those things where, similar to Marco Kasper, where like they're doing the right things and everything is saying they should be getting better results, but he just wasn't getting rewarded. It's really frustrating as a fan, and I bet you even more frustrating as a player to know that you're doing all the right things and not getting rewarded for it. But that is the upside. The silver lining is that everything says that they should be performing better. It's not just like they're playing bad and analytics say they're playing bad. Like
right.
They're just not getting rewarded, and they're so young that you could still see that needle drop on the other side, and they turn into an effective player. And honestly, you kind of hope that they do, because if they don't, if Casper and MBN and Danielson and all of them end up being busts, or at least not as effective players as where they were drafted should be, well, then the Red Wings have no future. So
we can hope.
Yeah, the preview for MBN is based a lot on hope. Scotty, you have any final thoughts?
We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode Wednesday. Stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.